Welcome to the Ordinary Doula Podcast with Angie Rozier, hosted by Birth Learning, where we help prepare folks for labor and birth with expertise coming from 20 years of experience in a busy doula practice, helping thousands of people prepare for labor, providing essential knowledge and tools for positive and empowering birth experiences.
Hello and welcome to the Ordinary Doula Podcast. I am your host, Angie Rozier, and today we have with us a very special guest. Her name is Holly Richardson. She wears many, many hats. I'll kind of let her introduce herself. But the first hat I knew that she wore was my doula trainer some 23 years ago. Holly has, as I've watched her over the last several years, had her influence on so many different things, and she's an incredible woman. So Holly, will you introduce yourself a little bit, give us a little bit of background, and then we'll introduce our topic for the day.
Sure. It's really varied, right? So there's a lot of different things in my background. So doula and doula trainer was one of those. Also, direct entry midwife, and that was one of the things that got me into politics, which led down a whole different path. I became a blogger. I had I had a blog called Holly on the Hill. I was going to say podcast, but they didn't even exist.
Those weren't there back then.
Right? They were not. And then from there, I started writing for the Salt Lake Tribune in Utah. I did opinion columns for 4 years, and then I switched over to the Deseret News, and I do opinion columns there. But more importantly, I do a daily newsletter called Utah Policy. So it really is about politics. So here, a long time later, I'm really involved in politics, which when I was your doula trainer, I did not, you could have told me that and I'm like, whatever, no way will that happen. Right. So, and even more outlandish is I ended up getting a PhD in political science. It's like, what the freak?
You went down a big rabbit hole that you love.
Big rabbit hole. Right. So my first academic degree was as a nurse, and then I got 2 degrees in communication and finished it off with a degree in political science. Anyway, now I'm co-host of a radio show on KSL News Radio. It's every morning from 9 to noon. It's called Inside Sources, and it's really fun. It's something different. I've only been doing it for a few months and just really, really love it. Have a chance to talk to lots of really fun people.
Very cool. I love to listen to that. I try to catch you whenever I can. So you're doing a great job. Thank you. Thank you for your voice. I appreciate it. So today our topic, this is something, as I've gone to a couple births throughout the year with home birth midwives, some of whom were in the industry 20 years ago, got chatting and realized that 20 years ago, something pretty incredible happened in the state of Utah around home birth and home birth midwives. And Holly had a front row seat to that. So I kind of wanted to chat with her about that. I actually wanted to host a party or a celebration or just shout it from the rooftops, because I think it's very important to, a lot of people don't know this story, right? This is going to be new to them, but to realize what we have here in Utah, the accessibility to options and choices for families of Utah and how they birth, where they birth, came from 20 years ago, a lot of it. And I don't know that everyone knows that. So I just want to do a shout out for that. And during that 20 years, I did spend 5 years living in North Carolina, where the birth laws are incredibly different, and how that impacted practice and families there. So coming back to Utah, even more grateful for the options that we have here. So Holly, if you can tell us this story, like what was going on, what was different before 2004, 2005, and what was different after?
So it's really funny to look back, because what the norm is now, right? You just mentioned, it's kind of normal that we have options and we realize that we do. But in 2000, I had actually just certified as a certified professional midwife, which is a national certification. And there was a midwife in the state of Utah who was arrested and charged with practicing medicine without a license. And I felt like her actions were totally appropriate. They were certainly within the scope of her training and her skill set. But what we realized as a midwifery community is that the laws, what we were told about the laws in the state of Utah, were not actually accurate. So they were partially accurate. So parents had the right to choose, and parents 20 years ago could choose to deliver their babies wherever they wanted. However, if you were
So
not,
that's not illegal. Parents were doing nothing illegal.
parents were not doing anything illegal, but if you were the provider, then you were practicing medicine without a license, which is a third-degree felony.
Mm.
Not good, right? And
Right,
it could
right.
be, they could pursue anything from you diagnosed a pregnancy, you prescribed a specific treatment, so then you diagnosed, prescribed, and treated. You just have three counts right there, right?
Wow.
So yeah, using just anyway, there was a lot. And so as we looked into the law, we realized that we did not understand completely how the law would apply until this midwife was arrested.
So it kind of took that catalyst to take a
It
good
really
look.
did. Yeah, it really did. And then there was a kind of a cohort of us that were willing to be on the Hill and talking to legislators. This was a group effort. There's no question. This process took us 5 legislative sessions. So beginning with the legislative session in 2001. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So 4 calendar years, but 5 legislative sessions to pass a bill that legalized direct entry midwifery in the state of Utah. And I look back now with some amusement in some ways because I remember it being really hard. It was really hard.
Yeah.
And now
And
it's just
because
like
you didn't know, like the system, is that?
partially, yeah, partially. So one of the things that happened when we said, "Hey, we're going to go change this law," is we had people say, "You do not want to know what you're doing. You're going up against one of the most powerful lobbies in the state of Utah, the Medical Association,
Yeah.
and and you're never going to be successful." And they were right on 2 out of the 3 counts, right? So we did not know what we were doing. We were going up against a powerful lobby, and it took us a while, but we were successful. And it's one of the things now where at the time it's like we have a 45-day legislative session in Utah. So if you are not done by the last week of March, you have to wait until January,
Starts
right?
over. Yeah.
And I remember like just crying more than once when our bill died and we're like, oh, we gotta wait another year.
Does that mean you start over or do you start where you left off?
Well, there's some of both, right? So your relationships carry over, but there's elections every 2 years for
Mm.
representatives, every 4 years for senators. So you may have to reestablish new ones. Rewrite the bill for sure, right? You had to be
Mhm.
able to say, okay, what are your concerns? How do we address your concerns? Those types of things. So the fourth year, so in 2004, we were able to get it through the House, but it was
Mm.
killed on the Senate side by people we thought were our allies, and that was really disappointing.
Oh, that's hard.
And then we had to wait another whole year, right? And it did not pass. It was one of the very first bills released in the session. It did not pass until 9 p.m., the last day of the legislative session, a few
Wow.
hours before
Wow.
the end.
Wow.
So, and it only passed by one vote.
Wow.
I mean,
So
in
it
the
was
Senate.
close. It was close.
Very close, very, very
Wow.
close. And what's interesting since then is it has just become the norm,
Mm.
right? I
Does it ever
remember
get contested along the way? Like, do we ever revisit?
they did right at the beginning. Yeah. So our opponents contested right at the beginning. And by contest, I mean they wanted to propose different laws. There was one, like, I don't think anybody did it the next year, but the second year after we passed it, there was a bill that wouldn't have completely eliminated the law, but what it did was imply so many restrictions. Like you literally would have like, I don't know, maybe 5% of pregnant women would fit into that category,
Mm.
being able to
Oh,
deliver.
to risk out, right?
Right. So if you had ever had a baby before 37 weeks, if you ever had a baby after 40 weeks, if you'd
Mm.
ever have a baby bigger than 8 pounds or smaller than 6 pounds, I mean, it
Wow.
was so narrow that it was like, this is ridiculous. And so after that, we actually did have a rules committee for a while that was established and set up, and I was part of that. We had at least one physician, now I can't remember, at least one certified nurse midwife. We had I think we had 3 direct entry midwives actually on the committee, and we came up with rules. And those are the ones that are still basically in place. And what that did is one, provide some parameters for these licensed direct entry midwives, but it also provided an additional level of things that you could do as an LDEM because you had taken a pharmacology class and you had a physician that you worked with to create, some kind of a list of things that they felt comfortable with you administering. There were also other rules about like when we transport those types of things. So we are the only state in the nation that has a voluntary licensure program. It's very unique. It can be confusing, and that's one of the arguments I continue to hear is that's confusing because I thought they were licensed. Yes, some of the midwives in the state are licensed, but not all the midwives in the
So
state.
they can be, they're allowed to be, but they don't have to be.
That is
So
correct.
that's pretty flexible.
That's very flexible, but you're now legal as a direct
Yeah.
entry midwife to practice in the state of Utah,
Yeah.
right? So you don't have to worry that you're going to go to jail because
Right.
you're doing a birth,
Yeah.
right? So, yeah.
So I recall I was a baby doula at the time. I remember going to a couple meetings. I didn't know what was going on. I felt, overwhelmed. But I remember something about there was concessions given like twins versus VBACs.
Yep.
And like more people are gonna be facing a VBAC at home than multiples probably. And so things like that. And it sounds like this rules committee had the voices of everybody at the table, right? Everyone had a voice.
Yes, and the rules committee came about after the law actually passed. So yeah, there are some things in the law that were the kind of put in place. But yeah, you're correct about that. We wanted to be able to give as much flexibility as possible for as many situations as possible. But the twins thing is actually a rule, and
Mm.
it's in the actual legislation. So it's in the rules for licensed direct entry midwives. So there's just like a variety of things. Like if you're a licensed direct entry midwife in the state of Utah, you could administer Pitocin for a hemorrhage. If you are not licensed, you do not have the legal authority to do that.
Hmm.
Everyone has the ability to carry oxygen because even our detractors are like, well, if you're going to do it, you should probably have oxygen.
Right, right. Let's be smart about it.
So yeah. So there were some of those things like that. And it was, from there, we got the Licensed Direct Entry Midwife Act with rules put in place. So now we have a licensure. We also got birth centers
Yes. Mhm.
legalized and licensed. And I will say that was Suzanne Smith. That was really her work. And one of the things that happened is it just came out as an offshoot, I think, of this work that we did with midwifery, because she started reading the law and she was like, this law literally makes it impossible for anyone to have a birth center. Technically legal on the books,
But
but so
impossible.
many restrictions, it was impossible.
Mm.
And so we had an ally. It was Senator Deidre Henderson at the time. She's
Oh,
now
yeah.
the governor for the state. And she had her intern scouring meeting minutes, listening to recordings, and she was like, they were open in their disdain for birth centers and
Mm.
people who practice there. And they're basically like, we're going to prevent them from doing this. But we were able to press forward, especially Suzanne. And so now we have the ability to have legally licensed birth centers in the state of Utah as well.
Which there are so many, right? Like
So many.
there's a plethora of birth centers available from all along the Wasatch Front, and so many home birth midwives, which people have a lot of choices. So wow.
Yeah, and isn't that interesting, right? That it's been normalized. And
Yeah.
when I started this journey, I would say 25, well, I mean more than that before when I started practicing, but the legal journey 25 years ago, people largely were unfamiliar with midwives,
Mm.
right? So we would have legislators who asked us things like, well, how do you do a C-section at home? Like, well, we do C-sections at home,
Wow.
right? And
Yeah.
they just didn't know. And
So a
now,
lot of education had to take place.
yeah, lots for a lot of them. So
Wow.
now we have things like Call the Midwife, right? Which is a really great, realistic show, I think,
Yeah.
that normalize that. And we have people who've discussed it more. And now when I say, I've been a midwife, they're like, oh, that's really cool. Right?
Mhm. It's like, what is that? Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. So it has become more normalized. And I know Utah has a higher home birth or out of hospital birth rate than many other states, which is kind of interesting. But these partially, I mean, we have an interesting family dynamic here as well.
Yeah.
But the laws are friendly to it as well.
Yeah, the laws are friendly to it. And as far as I'm aware, there are no rumblings of any kind of legislation aimed at doulas. But Well, even lawmakers know what doulas are now.
Yeah.
And there have been, in fact, there have been several lawmakers championing doulas getting paid through Medicaid.
Medicaid, yes.
Yeah, because there are plenty of studies now that show how helpful doulas are in decreasing the complication rate, which at the bottom line, if you're a politician, a legislator, you're looking at how do I best spend taxpayer money? It's a lot better investment to spend on a doula.
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely. That can bring down your obviously cesarean, NICU,
That's
all
right.
those things.
Right.
Yeah.
All those
Yeah.
things. Yeah.
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 Wow, that brings a whole nother podcast episode to mind. Because that, and some states are, I work with a group that's working on that across the country, and some states are reimbursing $3,500 Medicaid, which is
Holy cow.
pretty incredible. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
pretty
That's
incredible
really
rate.
incredible. Yeah.
So hopefully we're making headway there. And so just doing a little research, like Alabama, Nebraska, North Carolina remain, and illegal may be the not quite correct term, but they're just not allowed. They won't allow licensure. So
Yeah.
same thing that Utah used to have, I suppose, right?
Yeah, and I would say so. I think when we passed our law, there was kind of a little flurry of states passing laws right around that time, the early 2000s, and I think we were state number 26.
Hmm.
So we were just the tipping point to be over halfway. But there were some that were then, and I think still are now, very, very hostile to
Hmm.
midwives,
Yeah.
right? And it's like some of the stuff that we heard. We were called baby killers. We heard a lobbyist who still works on the Hill. I still see him every year, who said that if the state approved this, they would also have to set aside money for body bags because we would be burying people in our backyards. I mean,
Oh,
there's stuff like that where it's like, oh my gosh, right?
yeah.
We had at my house, this is back in the day when we used to have a home phone. My kids would answer the phone and people would yell at them and tell them their mom was going to go to jail. And
Wow.
I mean, people were not excited about this
Wow.
opportunity. And now, again, it's become normalized. And that was one of the things that even our detractor said is once you pass this, this becomes normal. This becomes what government says is okay. And you don't want to go down that road. They were right about that first part. It has become normalized.
Yeah, yeah, and in a good way, in a lot of ways, but also because it is a pretty broad stroke, licensed, unlicensed, people have to be cautious, right? Those who are
Yeah.
practicing as midwives, licensed or not, and those who are choosing. So, what
Yeah.
advice do you have for families who are selecting out of hospital birth? Because we have a lot of options. What
Yeah.
advice might you have for those looking at birth centers or midwives out of hospital?
I think you need to be really clear about asking whether they're licensed or not. And I will say this, one of the more recent pieces of legislation, and I'm going to think it's maybe, I can't remember in relation to the pandemic. So in the last 5 years, I think
Hmm.
there's been a new law that says every single midwife, no matter what kind of midwife you are, has to have informed consent. And on that
Oh,
informed consent document, you must specify what your training is and whether you're licensed or not in the state of Utah.
yeah.
And so for parents, your best question to ask them is, are you licensed in the state of Utah? What's your training? What's your background? What do you do in cases of emergency, right? And the the concerns that I still hear rumblings on the Hill about is this people are just not sure. They heard midwife, they know licensure is available, they thought their midwife was licensed,
Hmm.
right? So you can ask those types of questions. Absolutely would ask those. What do you do in case of emergency? How do you solve, how do you handle a hemorrhage? Are you licensed to carry Pitocin to stop a hemorrhage? What's your plan if we need to be transported to the hospital? But really, you can ask just point blank, are you licensed and where's your informed consent form?
Yeah. And licensed, that is through the NARM, correct? Is that kind of what we're looking at for
No.
CPMs?
Well, yes,
It's,
for the state of Utah, you have to be licensed in the state of Utah, and that's a really good point, actually. So you want to know what type of licensure. So I guess clarify the question: are you licensed in the state of Utah as a licensed direct entry midwife?
mhm.
Because you can get a certification that's the Certified Professional Midwife, the CPM, right, without being licensed in the state of Utah. So you can do the one, but not the other. But in Utah, to be a licensed direct entry midwife, you have to do both. And there's a couple of additional steps that you have to take. You have to have the CPM. And so they didn't want to reinvent the wheel. You do the CPM, the national exam, those things, but you also have to do a pharmacology class. You've got to do a fetal heart rate monitoring class. You've got to pass a background check, and there's some CEUs that you have to do on an ongoing basis. So there is a difference, and that's a very good question. And thanks for asking that.
Yeah, okay. And that's what I kind of looked up. It was like CPR is involved, obviously record keeping, getting consent, like you had said.
Yeah.
And it also comes in, as you had mentioned before, like transfers. When transfers happen, Utah has become much more friendly to a transfer situation, correct? There's a lot of collaboration that's happened with that, which is helpful to everyone, right? Just
Yeah. And one of the things that happened during the birth center discussion is, well, you have to have an agreement with the hospital, but that was part of the impossible paradox.
I remember that.
Not a single hospital that would say, I will put in writing that I will take any patient that you transfer.
Right.
But because of federal law affecting emergencies, so it's the EMTALA law, it's emergencies and labor, right? Because of that, they will take anybody who comes in, right?
Yeah.
So typically people will transfer to the closest hospital.
Right, just proximity.
Yeah.
Very cool. Interesting. Cool. Yeah, I know in North Carolina, we had people going to South Carolina, Virginia. Some of our midwives, longtime midwives, have been in jail before. And transfers, like kind of dangerous. Like they had to drop and go. Like they couldn't share information because it's pretty hostile to that. So gosh, I learned a whole big piece of gratitude for what we have here.
It used to be that way in Utah. A lot of people would do that. Or they would go in and they would say, well, this is my sister. Well, really, that's like the fourth one you've transported here.
You have a lot of sisters.
You have a lot of sisters, yeah. Right. And I remember there were midwives they were based in Utah, but because it was not legal, we were in this whole process. They would drive up to Wyoming in like an RV, and they would do prenatal care and stuff up there in Wyoming across the border because it was already legal in the state of Wyoming, right? There's those types of things that actually make it less safe for parents having babies. And so now I think, Utah does have a lot of really great options for parents.
Yeah. So making it legal in this manner makes it more safe for everyone.
I think so.
Very cool. I agree. Very cool. Holly, anything else you want to leave with us? And again, my shout out from the rooftops is gratitude to those who did the work so many years ago. And for those of us who have benefited from that, I've had 2 home births myself since then, been to dozens and dozens as a doula. But yeah, any parting thoughts with us for where we're at?
I wanted to share a couple of funny stories.
Okay.
So we knew that we needed to get lawmakers' attention, and we knew that there were people who were in opposition to our bill who were getting their attention. And so one of the marketing campaigns that we did was to send a postcard every time a baby was born. And we added a couple layers of informed consent, right? The midwife had to consent, the parent had to consent. But basically, it was just a generic postcard, and it was addressed to the lawmaker for that area, or the two, right? A representative and a senator. And it said, congratulations, a new constituent was just born in your district, right? With a home birth midwife.
Clever.
So there were so many going out that I had boxes that I had a senator come up to me one time and say, I will not vote for your bill if you don't stop sending me those.
You proved your point.
And he was joking, mostly joking, because he was a supporter. He was an early supporter. But it was so funny. He was like just totally overwhelmed.
Wow.
Also,
so that helps them see the numbers, right? Like
it did, right?
In real time.
Like, nobody in my district has a home birth, right? So that was one of the ways to make that visible.
And then also the opposers, I imagine, when we look at numbers, say to hospital transfers, you're going to see a fraction and a not the best fraction, right? So the glimpse you're getting is not not the shining part of it.
Yeah, sure. So 8 and 10 stay home, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Maybe 20% transfer. So that was one thing. And then the other thing is we adopted bright pink, and that was my favorite color at the time. So I probably had some influence there. It was really fun. But we did M&Ms so for moms and midwives, and every opportunity we had to hand out something with a statement or an invitation, it would be moms and midwives for whatever. So we get down to the end on the last session, and we had all these moms, and we ended up recruiting as many people as we could find. I swear we ended up with like 425 people, volunteers. Mm-hmm. Some of them grandma and grandpas. Some of them, never going to have a baby in their life. Some of them actively breastfeeding or pregnant, whatever. We just all these people, and they all wore these stickers, and we just flooded the committee rooms, and every legislator, when you look out there, you can see a sea of people who are there to support that bill, right? That's powerful and impactful. So,
and that bright pink probably stood out pretty good.
The bright pink stood out, and that's one of the reasons you do it, right? It's like, well, I can tell what group you're with, right?
Yeah.
And I think, again, having those, having enough people who cared, even if you yourself were not going to have a home birth. And in fact, we had people who would say, I'm still in my childbearing years. I would never choose that option, but I think people should have that ability to choose the option.
Right.
We ended up with so many volunteers, right? If it were just a few of us saying, hey, do this, we would never have been successful. But because we were able to mobilize this volunteer army, we really had that. And like I said, now it was really successful, but now I look back and say, well, that was fun. But at the time it was not fun.
No. And I didn't realize how long it took, how many years of effort that was. And nobody was paying you to do this, right?
No, it was money out of our pockets.
Yep, absolutely. So that's incredible work. And I know if I remember people at the time, but main players. And are you able to share with us yourself? You talked about Suzanne Smith. Any other main players that we can be grateful for?
Heather Johnston was the other one.
Yeah, absolutely.
Legislative. So there were I think that was kind of the core group, the three of us, but everybody played a part, right? So the doulas in the state, the midwives in the state, we had just a variety, and we had. Again, some even within our own community, it was split. So some were supportive and some were not.
Yeah.
Some called us midwives. Some were,
That's right.
Yeah.
I remember that.
There's lots of tension there. But for a lot of people, I think their preference was to kind of keep their heads down. And I understand that, right?
Stay off the radar, right?
Yeah, especially because the way it kicked off was an arrest with a felony charge.
Right.
They would have preferred that we not shake the tree.
Yep.
But we did, and I'm really happy we did. And 20 years later, I'm still shaking the tree. So
yes, you are. You found new trees to shake too. So.
New trees.
Lots of trees out there. Wow, cool. Well, Holly, thank you so much for giving us a glimpse of the work, because I love where we are, and I want to appreciate those who've come before, whose shoulders we stand on in this awesome work that we're doing. So appreciate you.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Glad to have you here. Thanks for being with us. We'll wrap up our podcast episode today. And as always, please go out and make a human connection with someone you know, someone you don't. Human connection is important. Thanks for being here, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Ordinary Doula podcast with Angie Rozier, hosted by Birth Learning. Episode credits will be in the show notes. Tune in next time as we continue to explore the many aspects of giving birth.